And welcome back once again to me channel. My name is Rusty. And if you've never been here before, this is my channel where I talk about my favorite horror movies and my favorite music. And there you go. Mostly metal, mostly horror. You know the drill. Every once in a while, even I'm going to screw it up. But what have I done? 200 of these things now, and it's the same intro. So, you'd think I would know it by heart. And I do. So, we are going to move on now to a nice, cool little vampire movie called The Shed. I really liked it. Of course, or I wouldn't be doing it. But I really liked this. I love the lead actor, J.J. Warren. He's like really, yeah, he's all those things. But, oh, and his friend, Drummer. I was like, why would you name a character something like Jeffrey Dahmer? But too close to it. But anyway, his name is Drommer, Drommer. Yeah, he's all those things too. But yeah, really excellent little vampire movie that I adored. It went off the rails a couple of times, but so basically, The Shed was released in 2019, directed by Frank Sabatella, written by Jason Rice, and it stars J.J. Warren, Cody Castro, and Sophia Happerman. And yeah, so get my screensaver back up. So this movie opens with a hunter. There's a hunter out in the woods, and we later find out his name is Bane, and he is stalked and bitten by a really cool looking vampire with a very bad sense of timing. You would think a vampire would have a better sense of timing because, you know, it being so important to them. But right after he gets bit, the vampire gets hit by rays of the morning sun as it's coming up. And that's what I meant by you would think that a vampire would have a better sense of timing about something that was so drastically important to their existence. But, so yeah, he watches as this vampire that just chewed him up gets emulated by the morning sun, which is not a really good sign for him because he instantly turns and the sun is hot. So he starts running. He gets to the edge of the woods and he sees a shed by these people's house. So he runs inside of it. He sees a tarp on a wood pile and he throws it over himself and he runs inside this tarp where he, of course, transforms into, I guess, this movie's vision of a vampire. You know, their teeth fall out so that the vampire teeth can come in and they get their, you know, it's definitely not Twilight or Interview with a Vampire kind of vampires. This is more of the Nosferatu type of vampires. So, yeah, so he's kind of trapped in there, and that's when we are introduced to Stan. Stan is the lead character. He lives with his really assholish, abusive grandfather, whom I was quite happy to see get eaten. But he lives with him. He is one of the bullied kids. That's why his best friend is also a bullied kid named Drummer. So he's troubled. You find out why. Basically, his mother got sick and his father committed suicide after her death. So that's how he ended up in care, and then ended up, you know, being let out under the care of his assholish grandfather. So, yeah. And we see him go to school where, you know, we were introduced to his friend Drummer and the three bullies, Marble and Pitt, and I don't know what the other one's name was. But hey, man, yeah, I mean, does it really matter if you've got a little gang and their names are Marble and Pitt? You don't really care what the other one's name is. So, um, we see their school activity and how they try to make this movie. They try to hit comedy angles just a little bit, and by the type of comedy is like Fargo, that type of comedy, um, Crazy Locals type of comedy. So he goes home after a typical shitty day at school, and he's going to mow the lawn. His grandfather screaming at him to mow the lawn. So he goes into the shed to get the stuff where he meets this creature who tries to attack him. He manages to get out. He's freaked out. He goes and gets his dog. Comes and it's like, come out. He's like, fucking crackheads. There's a crackhead in the shed. And I thought, this is rural America. Is that really the first thing you're going to think of? But whatever. So he thinks it's some kind of crackhead from the way that it appeared to him in the dark in there. He gets his dog, so I'm going to stick me dog on you. Stuff like that. And he eventually does do that. And, of course, the dog is made quick work of. And all he knows is that the dog's head comes flying out of the shed. So that freaks him out even more. He runs inside. His grandfather starts screaming at him what the fuck's going on. He tells his grandfather that there's something in the shed that's killed his dog. Bullshit, bullshit, you're full of shit. So the granddad goes out there, and I'm like, this is the one instance where I'm like going, please go in the shed. Just go check for yourself. I'll give Bane this one. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can have that one. So the grandpa goes in there, and grandpa is ripped to shreds. Thank goodness he doesn't come back, or at least, I don't know. I don't know who that was at the end, but there's somebody at the end that's left. I don't know who. But, so we're showing school scenes, because now he knows that there's this thing in the shed that has ate his grandfather, killed his dog, and you're like, well, why didn't he call, like, the cops? Because he's under the supervision of his grandfather. If it's discovered that his grandfather is dead, he's going to get put back into care. So he doesn't want that to happen. So he's not really sure what to do, because he'll go back into care. Meanwhile, there's this ex of his named Roxy. You've always got to have the female character. I swear you people run everything. But, so Roxy is his ex at school who left him for one of those bully boys, Marble. And she's the part of the stuck-up crowd, like the Marble, like the bullies are. So it's sort of like she outgrew us, doesn't want to hang around us, is the way Dahmer puts it. So we learn a little bit about his past during that discussion. The mom getting sick and the father's suicide, and then they end up leaving. And Dahmer gets beat up because he's on his own. It's like Silence of the Lambs in here. There's a death's head moth in here. But so Dahmer ends up getting beaten by the three guys, because Stan had went on home. Now Dahmer shows up and is like, what the fuck are you doing? You left me and then got me. I got beat up because you weren't there to help me. And it's like, well, you probably shouldn't be such an asshole. But Stan tries to talk to whatever this creature is in there, and was almost pulled in. And that's when Dom walked up, and it's like Dom tells him, about being beaten half to death. And he looked bad too. And Stan is like, doesn't really know what to do, but ends up telling Dom about this creature in the shed. Now, of course, Dom is like, "You're full of shit." So they get close enough for Dom to see. And he's like, "Oh shit, this is cool." And Stan's like, "What do you mean this is cool? This thing, there's a creature in there. It's killed, it's killed my grandfather and my dog and stuff like that." And then Dom is like, "No, no, no, no. We can use this to like get rid of people. We just need to get those three assholes over here and, let them have fun in the shed." So I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that idea actually. Then again, I'm a horror buff, so I'm gonna look at things a little different. I'm pretty much on Dom's side where it comes to this particular issue is concerned, because Dom wants to use the creature to take out their enemies, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. So I'm kind of on his side. So Stan starts trying to. He puts like holes in the roof to like control it. Like, don't fuck with me. Stay in the back. Don't come out here during the sun. Of course, that ain't gonna have any effect at night. So he keeps the shed all like blocked up. Now the sheriff shows up and informs Stan. First, she asks about the grandfather, like, where's your grandfather at? But the main reason that she was there to tell him is that Bane is actually a neighbor way down the road and that he's missing. And explains that the rabbits or something had been being killed by foxes or something. Now, we of course know it was probably that vampire. But that Bane had left with his gun to go out into the woods and get the foxes or whatever that had been eating his rabbits. So that kind of like brought that circle together, because now you knew, okay, this vampire in there was Bane, what he was doing out there in the woods, how he got, this vampire had obviously been feeding off their livestock. So, the next day at school, Stan ends up getting to a fight with Marble where he like clocks him. I mean, he beats the shit out of him in the thing before they what is that? I guess the principal or another teacher or something intervenes. But he beats the shit out of him, and the principal informs him that the reason the sheriff had brought him to school that morning, when she asked about the grandfather and told him about Bane, was because she wanted him at school so that she could go back and talk to his grandfather, because the principal wanted to have a conference with him about Stan's behavior. Now, when Stan hears that, he's like, the sheriffs went back to my house? And they're like, yeah. So Stan, of course, he flips out and he takes off, because Stan is the good guy. And he's like, if she goes back to the house and goes looking for my grandpa, she's going to go into the shed. So he's actually trying to protect her. So he manages to run all the way back to his house. She's, of course, already there. She's already searched the property. She is approaching the shed and hearing something in there, seeing the way that it's kind of locked up, and she comes to the conclusion that Stan has made his granddaddy disappear and has him locked in the shed. Now, right about the time she approaches the door, Stan makes it and gets back there and is like, don't do that. And she pulls a gun on him, makes him get down on the ground. Like, you have your granddaddy locked up. You got your grand locked up in the shed. And, don't move. He keeps trying to warn her, but she gets close to that door and she opens it. She is, of course, attacked, killed, and he even like rips her arm off and throws it out into the yard, all in front of Stan. So Uh, now that that's happened, fucking, he's dealing with that when all of a sudden fucking Marble walks around the house into the backyard. That's the asshole he just beat up at school who's come for some revenge. So he starts beating the shit out of Stan. And he even like gets out these brass knuckles and puts him on. He's going to beat the hell out of Stan when all of a sudden there's a gunshot. And it's Dahmer, you know. So Dahmer, he has the gun that belonged to the sheriff. And he starts like doing what you would expect he would. He's like calling Marble all these names. You're a fucking bully, you know. And Stan's like, no, don't do this, don't do this. And so him and Stan are kind of fighting because Dom, he has lost it. That ass whipping he took from these three punks earlier that day was the last one in his mind. So he's holding the gun on him, making him call himself a pussy and all this kind of stuff, and then forces him to go into the shed, where he is, of course, taken care of. How did he get knocked out? Yeah. Then Dahmer turns around and knocks Stan out when Stan starts freaking out about it. So when he wakes up, the shed door is open. It's still daylight, but the shed door is open. And he's kind of freaked out about that. So he walks into the shed, can't find the vampire. You know, he can't find Bane. But then, in the very back, he sees something, and he starts, you know, goes like, Bane, is that you? I know that's you. And it comes out, and it's fucking Dom. Dahmer had intentionally went in there after he knocked Stan out. He had intentionally went in there and made a deal with Bane, I guess, and let Bane turn him into a vampire intentionally. Because I guess he's, you know, like through with the world. So he's got to do that. So he ends up stabbing. They start fighting. You know, Dahmer's going to like turn him. And Stan ends up like stabbing him with you know, like the handle off a rake or something, you know, that he had broken. Stabbed him with a wooden stake, you know, to kill the vampire. And you thought he was dead for a little bit there. But he ends up running out. And Roxy, she has showed up now. So she's learning about it all while seeing the sheriff's arm laying there. And then Dom comes out of the shed. He's still alive, to try to get to Stan, but in a please help me way. So it was kind of sad. But it's like he turned into an asshole, but then he turned back into please help me. But there's really nothing they can do because he came out, he fell on the ground, he's got this big stick through him. And then the sun finishes him off, even though Stan tries to put a blanket over him and stuff. So that was actually kind of sad because once again, he came running to Stan for help when things got really bad. And after you've just been turned into a vampire because you want to take revenge on the world and then get stabbed with a stake, you know, things have gotten bad. So that was like a sad scene. And then we have Roxy and Stan knowing that Bane is coming back. They end up trying to get the house all prepared for Bane to come back. So Bane, they board up all the windows. They do all of this stuff to get prepared for his return because they know he's coming back. Probably because he's just an asshole. Or he may have been mad that Stan kept him locked in the shed. I don't know. exactly what his purpose was, other than these vampires don't seem to be. Well, like I said, it's not Twilight or Interview with a Vampire, so their agenda just does seem, to like eat people. So, um, the two bullies, Pitt and the other one, they show up, and Roxy and Stan are like, y'all need to leave. You really, really do. But of course, they refuse because Marble's car is in the yard. And they're like, oh no, we know he's here, so you gotta come and tell us what's going on or we're gonna kick your ass. Oh yeah, well, we're trying. You really need to leave. Well, Bane ends up getting one of them and rips him to shreds. Pitt, the other one, he starts screaming now to let him in. He immediately, like bullies are, he goes from a bully badass to, please, my gosh, help me. I'm the biggest wimp coward on the face of this earth in about 2 seconds flat. So that's kind of understandable. So they get in there. Now there's 3 of them. So they get in there and they're like, okay, we'll be fine. We'll be safe and all that kind of stuff. But then they hear some noise up there. And this is like one of the funny things in the movie was, he's like, well, I locked everything down here. And he's like, didn't you lock everything up there? And she's like, yeah, I locked everything up there. And he says, well, what about the attic? And she's like, what about the attic? I didn't know there was an attic. And then he looks at her like she's the stupidest individual in the world, which I entirely agree with because it's a farmhouse, like Amityville Horror looking house with a big attic window. You didn't know there was an attic? What the fuck you think that big attic window goes to? You know how you have houses, first floor, second floor, and then on the top they have there's an attic and they have windows in them. Well, that's what this house is. So she really looked stupid when she did that. So that was the kind of comedy, So, they're all looking around now. Pitt, well, you go check this room and this room. So Pitt, he ends up gotten by the other bully boy who has been turned. So Bane's like killing some people, but turning others. Dom got turned, but Marble didn't. The sheriff didn't. But now Bane turned this bully who just now ate his friend, and now both of them have turned. So they're after Roxy and Stan. Big fight there. Shotgun blast takes care of them. Stan manages to take care of them. His nightmares that he had, I'm just like jump back a little bit. The nightmares Stan has in this movie are pretty damn good jump scares. I mean, he's got some wicked nightmares. But coming back, so now we have the big showdown up there between Stan and Bane, which is pretty good. And he almost loses though, and of course Roxy saves the day by beheading Bane, and they end up taking all of the bodies. So you've got the sheriff, you've got Marble, the 2 other bullies, and you've got Bane's body and everything else, and they put it up on this fire pit, and then they burn all of the bodies. And then they climb into the car and they're taking off. Now, where they're taking off to, I don't know. But he turns to her again and he's like, well, I think we've cleaned everything up. We've taken care of everything. And then she's like, yeah, everything's fine. And then he says something like, did you lock the trunk? Or did you check the trunk? And you see the trunk start slowly opening. And the movie ends. So you're kind of left going, okay, wait. That was really good, but who's in the trunk? And it's like, did he mean, did you make sure that no bodies were left in the trunk? Because they were all dead. Um, it certainly couldn't have been Bane. And then you thought, well, I wonder what he did with the grandfather. You know, I mean, they never showed the grandfather. So, but anyway, something is in that trunk when they, and it started coming out and the movie ended. So, yeah. So that's it. It's a pretty cool little vampire movie to watch during Halloween. Um, if you've seen it, let me know what you think about it. I really love the actors in this movie. I loved the two leads, which would be Stan and Dahmer. Um, great eye candy and great actors. I liked the storyline. It was pretty cool. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It, of course, got a 7.5. It's like, I think every movie I watched this week got a 7.5. I think so. But I think that's my favorite. I think that's my favorite score is 7.5. And that just means I really liked it a lot. So, but yes, The Shed, 2019, from the executive producer of the Saw franchise. There was a decent amount of gore in the movie. Some pretty good dark underlying themes. I think Stan was really good, and Dahmer was fucked up. I mean, you could tell that boy had been through something. So, I mean, both of those characters were pretty troubled and pretty deep, and they did go into that. They really brought that across in the scenes. That these two were definitely had a hard life, and it showed in their decisions and their behavior and their overall attitude. So, yeah, that was The Shed. Love you and we'll miss you and bye bye. And always remember and never forget you're a very special person, even if you're not a Nosferatu. Okay? You do not have to be a vampire to be a very special person. But it helps. I will see you in the next movie. In the next movie? In the next video of the next movie. Love you, miss you. Bye. See you then.